other with respect. And the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates yet again, but mortgage rates are relatively unchanged. Freddie Mac says the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage hovered just below 6.1% for the week that ended today. That's still a far cry from a year ago when the rate was still sitting at just above 3.5%. And that's the latest. I'm Esther Dillard from the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
In Bell Gardens, 710 southbound before you get to Florence Avenue. Disabled vehicle still has the center lane blocked. You're going to be hitting the brakes from Floral Drive. Also in Ontario, 10 eastbound before you get to Milliken Avenue. Brand new accident making its way over to the right shoulder. You'll see some delays from 4th Street. And in South LA on the 110 southbound before Exposition Boulevard. Still working on this accident. It is in the Center Divider area, but it's slow from the 10.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I sell custom-made blinds, shades, and shutters that are easy to install at prices less than big box retailers. Blindster blinds are custom-made for your windows, and I guarantee they'll fit. Don't hire a pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
At the moment, the Philadelphia Eagles are a 1.5-point favorite over the Kansas City Chiefs in next Sunday's Super Bowl. The odds could change depending on the status of Patrick Mahomes' right ankle. Mahomes is trying to recover from a high ankle sprain suffered in the AFC playoffs against Jacksonville. Mahomes spoke to reporters today and said the ankle is still sore. The rankings are out for the best high school recruiting classes in college football. According to 247sports.com, the top 5 are Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. USC is 12th on the list. The Trojans landed 2 5-star recruits and 10 with a 4-star rating. UCLA is 38th on the list, but the Bruins got a commitment from a 5-star quarterback, Dante Moore from Martin Luther King High School in Detroit. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. Stay with us.
Wherever I choose to go, it won't take me far. I'm living. It's Georgia's DA, Fannie Willis, who built a reputation as a tough prosecutor who uses RICO statutes and rap lyrics against gangs, ready to take on the biggest case of her career. That is the indictment of former President Donald Trump. And has Black suffering become an industrial complex? A New York Times opinion writer says hellish loops of Black people being killed by police have become ritual theater and only compounds public desensitization to Black death. Hunter Biden is fighting back. He is now aggressively going after his dissenters, threatening lawsuits and requesting that the IRS and DOJ investigate his enemies. Will this be enough to curb the GOP's investigation of his laptop and every aspect of his life? And one day after the 55th birthday of Lisa Marie Presley, her mama, yes, Priscilla Presley, is in the news. She is contesting her daughter's will, which removes her as co-trustee of her daughter's estate and appoints Lisa Marie's 2 oldest children. I'm asking today, why is the country so obsessed with Elvis Presley and his family? You are listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580, your drive time destination for the day's trending news, real issues, real people, real talk. My debut show during Black History Month is happening every day, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And I am super, super hyped and so grateful to everyone who has started to join me, who's posting a comment, who's calling in. This is all about you, and I want to hear from you. In my first hour today, I am joined by LA Times columnist Erica Smith, an associate professor of sociology at Hunter College and frequent contributor to the Washington Post, Calvin Smiley. And in my second hour, I'm going to be keeping it real with the father of Michael Brown Sr. Michael Brown, as you all will remember, was killed in Ferguson, Missouri by a police officer in 2016. And we're going to be asking, what does it feel like to watch Tyree Nichols' funeral and to watch the pain and agony that his family is going through? And also ex-Buffalo police officer Cairo Horn, who was fired after she tried to prevent a white cop from choking an unarmed Black man. She's back in the news, and she's here to talk about the blue line. I want to hear from you in that second hour. Call me, 1-800-920-1580. Also, if you're watching via YouTube, post a comment. We just may read your comment on air. But you know, something that's bugging me in real time, breaking news from New York, that the district attorney is now thinking of additional charges against Donald Trump's already jailed accountant, Alan Weisselberg. DA in New York says they're going to maybe charge this accountant with additional fraud charges to put pressure on him to give up the goods on Donald Trump. This DA, who's been a little hesitant to go after Trump, now seems to have gotten his sea legs and is looking for every angle he can to perhaps prosecute Trump for that hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Y'all remember Stormy Daniels? Michael Cohen went to jail for the hush money payment. Donald Trump has not been held accountable, but maybe that's about to change. I don't understand all of these people, from accountants to lawyers to successful business people, who have gone to jail in defense of Donald Trump when he has demonstrated time and time again that he has no loyalty to anyone, not even his own family members. We've seen his niece all over TV just railing against him, telling us what a horrible human being he is. Yet all of these super successful and mostly white men continue to bow down to him like he's some kind of, I don't know, king or chief or something. So we'll see. We're going to keep our eyes on what happens to Alan Weisselberg, see if the pressure of additional charges and additional jail time for a man that's already in his 70s, if that will force him to spill the tea on Donald Trump. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580. Back with my contributors for this first hour, Erica Smith. She is a Los Angeles Times columnist, and Professor Calvin Smiley is Associate Professor of Sociology at Hunter College, and he's a frequent contributor to the Washington Post. So I'll start with you, Erica. This breaking news from New York that the district attorney is thinking about charging Alan Weisselberg with some additional fraud charges to put pressure on him to spill the tea on Donald Trump so he can possibly indict Donald Trump for that hush money payment we know he made to Stormy Daniels that Michael Cohen went to jail for. And then let's contrast that with Fani Willis, who's in Georgia, who convened a special grand jury, 75 witnesses, hours and hours of testimony. And she says she's maybe close to releasing an indictment against Donald Trump. Why do you think it's so difficult, given what appears to be one of the most, criminal former presidents or criminal elected official we've ever seen? Why is it so hard for these district attorneys to indict him?
Yeah, it was interesting kind of what you said in your monologue. We have all these people that are just hesitant to do this. And we've seen this throughout the length of the Trump administration. And so I think it's just one of those things where people have to get over the hump. I mean, as President Trump exposed so many cracks in our system, things that other presidents had just, not done that were a matter of policy as opposed to a matter of law. And now we're seeing what happens when out of office, prosecutors have to go ahead and actually potentially charge him. I think, in Georgia with Fani Willis, I think she's a person that's clearly has her career in mind. She wants to make a name for herself. We've seen her in other cases, particularly RICO cases involving rap lyrics, making a name for herself. I don't think she's going to hesitate. I think in some ways her eagerness might be pushing other prosecutors like in New York to actually file charges, that they see that, it's going to take a Black woman to kind of come in and show that this is actually possible and doable. And, I do think that this is a result of her efforts in pushing forward, and we're going to start to see some other charges, I hope.
Yeah, it's interesting. Donald Trump seems to be so elusive. What are you thinking, Calvin, about Fani Willis in particular? Because she has this reputation, she's using rap lyrics, she's using RICO statutes, but yet she's still, she was in court a week ago or so saying she needed a little bit more time. Are you optimistic that we're going to see an indictment from that Georgia district attorney?
Yeah, first let me say thank you for having me. The blunt answer is no. I think that, we've seen time and again while Trump was both in office, after office, these kind of, for lack of a better term, theatrics around trying to get him. I think that there is a will to get him, but I also think there's the kind of more international optics about putting a former president, regardless of your personal feelings about him, through this type of legal system, because how can you say you're number one in the world if you're now prosecuting a former president? So I think that she might want to, but I don't know if there are these kind of more Wizard of Oz folks behind the curtain with the levers and the gears who would maybe attempt to suppress that. But she's done a lot with RICO, and when RICO was established back in, I believe, 1970, it wasn't established so that prosecutors lose. It was established so they can win. So if she is able to get it, I think she might have a good case, but I guess time will tell.
Well, no doubt, Calvin, indicting a former president, a sitting president, or anyone that's even been near the presidency, would be historic, obviously. But I wonder what the consequences are, Erica, if he is not indicted, given the activity that he's engaged in. I mean, we're looking at pressuring Georgia state officials to engage in basically voter fraud in Georgia. We're looking at all kinds of, insurance fraud issues with the manipulation of the valuation of his properties in New York, and this hush money payment that Michael Cohen went to jail for. So if we don't see an indictment of Donald Trump, given what appears to be just, mounds and mounds of evidence against him, what message does that send to the country about some folks, being above the law?
Yeah, I mean, I think to what the professor was saying, I think there is this pressure, right, of us being number one in the world. But I think that part of being number one in the world is that at least we have this veneer, right, of transparency and accountability. I mean, I think those of us who live in the US, particularly those of us who are Black, understand that it's not that simple. But I do think there is a desire to at least push that forward. I think that, I think that the DA in Georgia is, taking her time with this. And I don't think that we're ever as a citizenry ever going to get the amount of charges we want against the former president. But I do think, she might file 1 or 2 charges. I'm not saying it's going to be successful, but I do think there is value anyway of trying to try and to show that while we might not be successful in proving some sort of accountability or, throwing, him in jail, I do think the effort does matter. And I do think that along with her desire to clearly make a name for herself, I do think that she also recognizes that there is value in trying. And so I think we have to do that. Somebody has to do it. I don't think it's going to be we've seen a lot of prosecutors come and go that have not, but somebody has to. And it looks like it's going to be DA Willis.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's happened with the district attorney in New York, because we know when he first took office, he seemed to be very hesitant. And in fact, he had some of those career prosecutors leave his office because they were so upset that he wouldn't move forward. So we're going to watch the space, see what happens. But, clearly Donald Trump is in so much legal jeopardy. It's hard to imagine that he can continue to mount any kind of presidential campaign, given all of the legal battles that he's facing, not just criminal, civil battles. He's having to sit for depositions and answer discovery and deal with, civil lawsuits as well. I want to shift gears for a minute, though, and talk about this maybe controversial New York Times opinion writer who says that Black suffering has become an industrial complex of its own. Basically, her position is that these hellish loops, she calls them, of Black people being killed by police has become theater. And she worries that watching these videos and showing these videos over and over again is actually doing more harm than good. Now, my colleague was on the show yesterday, Zoe Williams. He said, look, he doesn't even watch the videos. He says that's a level of trauma he doesn't even want to expose himself to. What do you think about that, Calvin? Do you think that these videos are helping move us forward in terms of some kind of real systemic police reform, or have they just become a form of political theater?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think that when we look historically, this kind of looping, as the writer talks about, has happened throughout American history, whether that was during the American early 19th and 20th century, with ideas around lynching and lynching postcards being sold at five and dime stores, or seeing the video cam recording of Rodney King, or seeing civil rights workers being hosed and beaten and sicked on by dogs. So I think what's changed is the medium. I don't think that this is anything new. I think it's just the medium that's changed. It's just on social media. To my second point, yeah, I mean, every time one of these videos comes out, I see it, and people want my opinion. I'm in a position where I'm teaching students. They want me to talk about it. Colleagues, friends want me to talk about it. So I do, at some level, feel obligated to at least see it. I write about it. I talk about this. But it's also important because, as much as these videos can be traumatizing, triggering, how many of these cases would have just gone unresolved or just been swept under the rug without that kind of video objectivity? I mean, I think of so many cases where videos, at the very least, started movements, right? If there wasn't video evidence of George Floyd being killed, and it was just a group of Black people who said that the cops were kneeling on him, would that have been anything? If there wasn't video evidence of Walter Sterling in South Carolina being shot in the back, and then a police officer throwing his taser at his feet, his police report that Walter Sterling went for his gun would have been taken at face value. So there is a real importance around the objectivity that smartphones and other video recordings give us.
I hear you on that, and clearly, and as a civil rights lawyer that's been involved in excessive force cases, police brutality cases for years, clearly it's not as if this kind of excessive force just started today. As you said, we just now have the technology such that, it can be actually recorded in real time, and then we can watch it. But I do wonder, Erica, you mentioned those postcards, Calvin, that those lynching postcards, that those were offensive, and those were postcards that we railed against as Black people. So is there a point, a saturation point? It's almost like a playbook. One of these horrific shootings or beatings happens involving the police, and then there's almost like this Super Bowl nature, the Super Bowl experience of, what you're going to see is graphic and it's coming up in the 5 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news, may not want kids to see it. So it's a lot of theater and build up to it. So is there a point beyond which, Erica, we can say we get the point, we know it's there, but only the people that need to see it, i.e., the district attorney or grand jury or people sitting as jury? Do you think we may get to that point where we say, okay, we don't need to see it, we know the playbook?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, and this is going to sound somewhat crass, but I think it's true, is, it's a question really of audience, right? I think that as Black people, as you said, we know that excessive violence has been happening and police violence has been happening forever. And, I think these videos, from going back to Rodney King have been methods to prove it, right? And I think that the medium of social media has just extremely just sped this process up, and it's made these videos not just accessible but almost ubiquitous. I mean, I think the conversations about Tyree Nichols was that I saw on social media was don't tag Black people in this because we don't need to see it, and or how can I avoid it as opposed to how can I watch it? And I think that is a newer facet of this conversation, and I think it needs to be talked about. But I do think the videos, particularly because there's no real standard really with a lot of police departments about when they release the video, how they release the video. Like here in Los Angeles, we still have videos that are heavily edited when they're released, as opposed to other police departments in the state of California, which are unedited. So there's still a lot of drama around videos and actually getting to the truth. And I think that any sense of like pushback of we don't need to see this is going to really undercut that broader push towards transparency and accountability. But I do think we really need to, and I say we as in I'm in media, think about what does it mean when we talk about these videos? What does it mean when we take still images from these videos and put them on the front page or put them on the head of, the top of the homepage or push them out to social media? Who are we traumatizing? Who is the audience for this? Because it's not the same as it was 10 years ago, post George Floyd. I think there are a lot of people out there that are really traumatized that don't have the jobs that I do or Calvin does or you do and kind of feel like you need to watch this, and we need to be aware of that.
But I'm thinking about the local news. How many times, do we walk by a television or local news is on, and he's like, oh, I don't need to see another car chase, or I don't need to hear about another break-in or another shooting, because we become desensitized to it. And I just wonder, as horrific as Tyree Nichols' beating was that we had to witness on those 4 videos, now they tell us some more videos are going to be released as well. And as you said, Calvin, watching George Floyd, literally the life being just pumped out of his body by, Chauvin kneeling on him. Are we getting to that point where it's like, oh, another Black man got killed by the police? What you gonna do? Go get the popcorn. I don't know. I just feel like there's not continuing to watch them. I don't know if that's the answer. And I hear you, Erica. Yes, people in the media, we're in the media, have to watch them. People, like I said, the judicial system, the legal system. But does everybody need to see them? I guess that's where I'm still a little uncertain about how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump in there and say, and what we do see is really such a minute amount of videos and amount of deaths that we hear at the hands of cops. On average, the police kill 3 people a day. So, when we can name one person and 1 or 2 names every few months goes viral, while that seems like a lot, or it's even more robust than what we are actually. So I think we already are in some ways a bit desensitized, because there always seems to be other catalysts to why a particular video goes viral or why a particular incident makes its rounds on the 5 o'clock, 10 o'clock and morning news in a particular way that other cases don't. And I think that's really important to understand in terms of contextual background.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a neat answer to this. Probably can't wrap it up with a bow, and I think we just have to continue to grapple with this. I do want to talk about Hunter Biden, though, Erica. He is like the punching bag for the GOP, and they've been chomping at the bit to get in control of Congress so that they can start an investigation of everything from his laptop that was, when he was doing drugs and not in his right mind, left at some repair shop, to investigating the Biden family. But Hunter say, look, gloves off, I'm ready to fight. And he's sending letters, cease and desist letters. He's threatening lawsuits against Tucker Carlson. He's asking for the IRS to investigate some of these GOP nonprofits who he says are disseminating a lot of this information, saying, hey, you need to look at their 501c status because they are crossing the line between, what's allowed for 501c3. And he's asking for the DOJ to investigate some of his enemies. Is this a good strategy? Do you think it's going to work to back the Republicans off some of these investigations?
Well, I think it's a strategy that had to come sooner or later, right? I mean, I think that he was not going to be a punching bag forever. And as you mentioned, it's been going on for years now. I mean, and to the point where you want to talk about people being desensitized, I think Democrats are desensitized for conversations about Hunter Biden. But I do think that it's a strategy that has to I don't know if it's going to actually help. I do think that, excuse me, I do think that it will buy him some time. And I think it'll buy the president some time to really talk about this. But I mean, as far as getting Republicans to back off, I don't think so.
What do you think it does, Calvin, in terms of Biden? Does it impact what happens to him in 24 if he runs for president? Is he going to have to run? And every other question asked by a reporter when he shows up at a campaign rally is, well, what about your son's laptop? What about your son's laptop? I mean, is that going to be the narrative like the Hillary Clinton emails, the missing emails is going to be the laptop, drama
right,
in the 2024? Yeah, laptop gate. There you go.
I mean, I think it certainly will be part of the obstructionist GOP agenda. I think another thing will be his age. I mean, I think they'll absolutely try to use, this idea of him being a senior. But I think it speaks to a larger point of what the GOP's larger agenda is, which is to create narratives that very much mirror reality television in America, right? Because it's sensationalized, it keeps people glued to the TV, it creates this kind of extremes, right? Either you're pro or you're against, and it also just keeps on highlighting the glaring contradictions of the GOP. Like, where are they on George Santos, right? I mean, this is a guy who is a pathological liar, but they will keep him in his seat. But going after Hunter Biden, in these straw man arguments, or maybe there is something there, but it doesn't seem like it's relevant to national or international diplomacy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought George Santos up. We're going to talk about him in the next block. Also, we're going to talk about the Presley family because they seem to be top of mind for so many people in this country. And in my second hour, I have Mike Brown Sr. and Carrie O'Horn. We're going to talk about what really happens when families go through the trauma of a police killing or someone in their family being killed. Stay with us. News, traffic, and sports coming up. KBLA Talk 1580.
Here at McKay's Family Mortuary, we offer a full line of services with a fine selection of caskets and urns. Also, assistance with cemeteries along with luxury limousine and funeral coaches and other needs pertaining to your family's wishes for your loved one. We accept Veterans Victim Witness Program for mortuary services only at zero cost to you. Cemetery selection does not apply. All insurances are accepted. McKay's Funeral Home understands that saying goodbye is never easy. That's why we've been providing compassionate and professional funeral services to the community for over a decade. Please contact McKay's Family Mortuary, serving Los Angeles, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties and the High Desert. 3918 Marine Avenue, Lawndale, California. 310-978-8877. That's 310-978-8877. By appointment only or log on to mckaysmortuaries.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I was able to speak with one of the panelists, the owner of Kids Love. Take a listen.
So Kids Love, KIDSLUV, is a first-to-market zero-sugar vitamin-enhanced functional beverage for kids.
So the zero sugar is really important because if not, the sugar gets on the teeth, it can cause cavities. So as a mom, I love this vitamins and hydration in one. Tell us what's happening here with Chase Bank today.
So I would say, I think what Chase is trying to do is create a community actually for entrepreneurs, a place where people can go. They have the space to do it. It's a beautiful space, and to be able to have these conversations. There are so many benefits to being a women-owned and certified business, from a standpoint of getting into stores, not paying the slotting fees of what it takes to be in stores. So I think Chase is trying to bring awareness to a lot of the things that people just don't know about, that not only the bank can help, but outside of the bank, their relationships can help create.
That's beautiful. And I know, this is how we build equity in communities of color, is kind of spreading that information and that knowledge. So thank you for being here today and doing your part and letting these women know that it is possible.
For KBLA 1580, I'm Maisha Cairo in the community with Chase.
We are back, and I'm talking with LA Times columnist Erica Smith, and associate professor of sociology at Hunter College and frequent contributor to the Washington Post, Professor Calvin Smiley. We're talking about George Santos. I was just reading another story. This guy, I don't know, Trouble seems to be his middle name. Now a veteran is claiming that George raised $3,000 on GoFundMe to help pay for some surgery for the veteran's dog, and in typical George fashion, made off with the money. And we're supposed to get some notes later tonight. An ex-employee or someone he didn't hire secretly recorded him. And it's supposed to be some explosive things that he said that are recorded. How much more can be piled onto this George Santos before he just gives in, throws in the towel, says, okay, it's over. I submit, you guys win. He stepped down from those committees, but he's been pretty, steadfast in his refusal to just resign. Erica, is there anything that can make this guy say bye, give up that seat and run before he gets indicted? Because that's what seems like is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like he's following the Trump playbook, right? Like, I'm just not going to quit. I'm not going to resign. I think that the short answer is probably no. I think he'll have to be forced out. I mean, I think, if anything, his long history of obviously spinning stories and getting what he wants and getting attention is the thing that, is the line that runs through all of this. I mean, this is a guy who loves attention, and there's nobody getting more attention these days, and probably him, well, a few other people, but I mean, he's getting tons of attention right now in Congress. Everybody knows who he is. Like, this is a guy that 3-4 years ago, nobody knew anything about him, except for maybe that guy in Brazil he stole from. But, I think that he is a name that everybody recognizes. So why would he, as a person who's wants attention, why would he ever step away from that? That's my That's my thoughts on it.
And I guess the bigger question is, Calvin, how did the guy even get here? Were we asleep at the switch as Democrats? Here's a guy that his resume is just riddled with lies. Everything he tells us is a lie. Everything he's done. And he has this mysterious amount of money that he puts into his campaign that can't be traced. What happened to good old opposition research?
Yeah, and I think Erica just stole everything out of my, like, I was going to say the exact same thing, right? He thrives on it, right? He's a clout chaser in the kind of Gen Z language where no one knew who he was, probably outside of his district of Long Island, until, you know, he won. And so, yeah, I agree with you 100%. Where was the fact checkers and the fact finders? But, you know, I think what we also see sometimes when it comes to opposition parties is, if they know they're going to lose a district regardless, they kind of don't pour that money into that background. Like, if they've already, you know, resigned that, okay, we're going to lose this district because it's a heavy GOP district, they just kind of you know, let lying dogs be, kind of thing. And so, yeah, but I think to your point, yeah, that is the quite literally the $1 million question. Where did the money come from?
Calvin, I just want you to know, somebody named Big Daddy wants me to say, hey, Dr. Calvin Smiley. So
all right.
On YouTube, you got an admirer by the name of Big Daddy. So I don't know. I'm not going to ask too many questions about who Big Daddy is. We'll just keep that between you and Big Daddy. But I just want you to know that. Talking about obsession, Erica, why are we so obsessed with Elvis Presley? And why is it front page news in the LA Times that Priscilla is suing the estate of her only daughter, Lisa, I guess fighting the grandkids, saying that she should be in control of Lisa Marie's estate? Why do we love the Presleys?
Well, I got to say, that decision to put that on the front page was not mine, just out of my pay range. But I mean, you know, I think it's, you know, it's a question I've asked myself many times. I think probably the last time when the movie came out, what was that, last year, 1.5 years ago. You know, I mean, my best guess is, like, you know, Elvis is just part of this idea of fictionalized Americana, right? I mean, Graceland, you know, king of rock and roll. And I think he died, I think, the year I was born. And I think his last concert was.
But yet you know so much about him.
I know, exactly. I just think that, you know, he is like this mythical idea of what people think America is, and what, you know, people who live through it think, you know, cool is, or whatever. And I think that people just can't let it go. I mean, it's more of an idea that I think of reality. And I think that extends in the way that not just Americans, because people in general around the world, we look at kind of these dynasties. And I think that they've been, you know, magnified, you know, in that way. And so this is just the latest iteration of that.
Yeah, I don't know, Calvin. The movie, I tried to watch it on a plane, full disclosure here. I could not get through it. Although the actor that plays Presley, Elvis Presley, you know, has been nominated for a bunch of, you know, awards. And apparently Lisa Marie, before, you know, her unfortunate passing, thought that he had done a phenomenal job of channeling her dad. So she was at one of those award shows, I think it was the Golden Globes Award, with the actor. Do you think with Lisa's passing that perhaps we hear and see a little less of Elvis?
No, I think actually what we're going to see is more of Elvis, right? I think we're going to see, you know, there's this romanticizing of this kind of very key fixture in Americana music. And, you know, Elvis is a proxy of Blackness, right? I mean, you know, Elvis himself talked about that, you know, he was influenced by Black music, Black rock and roll, but that's not how it's not how it's been, you know, situated in the history books, right? We look at Elvis, if you probably ask the average American, who is the godfather of rock and roll, you know, 9 times out of 10, you're going to hear names like Elvis and not, you know, Chuck Berry and others before him. And so, you know, I think it kind of goes into a lot of the other kind of mythical characters of Americana, whether that's Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, JFK. We hear these names and we want to know these stories. And I think also part of it is because these people are mysterious, because they also came from an era where social media didn't exist. So we didn't get all that backstory, like that juicy gossip like we do now. So, you know, every time we can unearth some kind of messiness in their lives, We can rewrite the biography. We can redo the Hollywood film and add that to the dirt or the gossip or the tea.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. We didn't have social media when Elvis was in his, prime. And I just hope we don't have to live with Elvis and the myth of Elvis, for decades to come. But you're listening to Areva Martin in real time. And coming up in my second hour, I'm going to be talking to Michael Brown Sr. about what this last couple of weeks have been like for him and his family, watching the horrific beating of Tyree Nichols. And Carrie O'Horn is joining me, and she's got some unique perspectives on policing in America. And in that hour, please give me a call. I want to hear from you. 1-800-920-1580 or post a comment on YouTube. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Weather challenges in California, at least 20 people lost their lives in the latest storms. And so, early January, Governor Newsom requested an expedited major disaster declaration for California, which was approved by President Biden for select counties. This making declaration that damage is beyond the combined capabilities of local and state governments to respond, so affected areas will be eligible for federal assistance programs. If you are personally affected, you can apply for state disaster assistance on cdss.ca.gov. For federal help through FEMA, visit disasterassistance.gov. To learn more about help, local resources, or for free emergency alerts, visit calalerts.org. Look into comprehensive auto insurance for automobile damage due to severe weather. Home and renters insurance should cover damage from fallen trees and wind. For KBLA, I'm Maisha Cairo, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
Join the circle of life at the Lion King. Don't miss your chance to experience the world's #1 musical. The Lion King is one of the most awe-inspiring productions ever brought to life on stage. Feel alive at the Lion King.
Now on stage at the Pantages Theater through March 26th only. Visit BroadwayandHollywood.com.
Our Weekly Los Angeles is the largest audited Black newspaper in the state of California, with a distribution of over 50,000 copies weekly. Pick up a copy every Thursday to get the latest news on African American communities of LA. You can also keep up with what's going on in Los Angeles and surrounding cities by going to www.ourweekly.com. The Our Weekly website is updated daily with the current news about us and for us. For your advertising needs, Our Weekly offers economical advertising packages to fit your budget. Feel free to call Our Weekly Los Angeles at 323-905-1300 or visit the website at www.ourweekly.com. Our Weekly Los Angeles, reporting news that matters to you.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk Radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically the way we spend our time defines who we are.
In real time, I'm trying to figure out, Calvin and Erica, why is there a headline that says Meta, which is, we all know as Facebook, soars by the most in decades, adding 100 billion with a B in value, and yet they laid off 11,000 people in November, and tech companies across this country have been laying people off. And then I'm looking at these salaries. I just tried to figure out, okay, what are these dudes making? Because they're mostly dudes, let's be honest about that. And I found a salary chart of CEOs. The chief executive of Paycom, Chad Richardson, makes $211 million as his compensation. I mean, in this list, he's at the top, and it just goes on and on and on. The least paid person on this list is at $32 million. What are you all feeling about all these layoffs at a time when these big companies are posting, like Meta, $100 billion in valuation. Something's wrong in this country, Calvin, and I don't know, do we ever fix it as long as we're a capitalist country?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's an egregious, gross amount of money, but capitalism allows those types of salaries to thrive while there are people who are experiencing houselessness, not investing in mental health. Right here in New York, where I'm at, earlier today, I was seeing how New York Sanitation and New York Police were quite literally threatening people with eviction from the streets. And where else are they going to go? I mean, if your only alternative is a shelter that is dirty and not clean and all these types of things. So I think we definitely have to reframe and reorient our way with economic distribution in this society. And as we know, socialist is a terrible term, but in a kind of American political arena. But I think that at some point we really have to rethink economic redistribution.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders tried to make socialism cool again, but it didn't work out too well for him in 2 elections. This is my rapid fire round. And I'm just going to ask both of you real quickly. Just give me, your 1-2 word answer on this series of questions. Eric, I'll start with you. Will the GOP controlled House ever pass the George Floyd and Policing Act?
Nope.
Okay, not very much optimism despite our
you said one word. I can expound on that.
No, well, we saw the vice president at, Tyre Nichols' funeral yesterday, making this passionate plea to get it passed. We saw Senator Tim Scott walking around the halls of Senate saying it's time to take action. What are you thinking, Calvin? Anything happens?
Probably not. And again, those types of laws don't prevent people like George Floyd from dying. It just doesn't.
Well, I'm going to agree with you in my rapid round, which I'm supposed to keep going, but I got to stop and say, yeah, they don't stop people from engaging in the kind of criminal conduct we saw those 5 officers engage in, but those laws do help move the needle, and they do send a message to police departments that there is, the federal standards, and that bill in particular will set up a federal registry, because right now we don't even know the numbers accurately of people killed by police. We don't know the race of the people who kill people. We don't know the race of the police that kill people. So there's so much data that's not being collected. And although you're right, it's not going to be a panacea, it's not going to end police brutality, but that bill is important in at least sending a message. And at this point, every little bit helps. There's a report out that one of the state senators in Tennessee, after Tyre Nichols, wants to ban police officers from riding around in unmarked vehicles, because we know that Scorpion unit, that's what they were known for, is riding around in these kind of cool cars that don't look like police and jumping out and frightening people, quite frankly. So I don't know. I agree with you, Erica. Not likely that this GOP-controlled Congress takes up the George Floyd bill at all. And even if it did, Scott does a lot of talking, but I don't see him prepared to break ranks with the Republicans and vote for it. Okay, next one is for you, Erica. Biden and McCarthy seem to have a pretty civil conversation yesterday about the debt ceiling and what we're going to do when it's time to, raise the debt ceiling, even though McCarthy's talking all this trash about cutting everything. He says Social Security and Medicaid are off the table, but I don't know if I believe Medicare, I should say. Any chance? Oh, I guess this is yours, Calvin. Any chance of them reaching an agreement on a debt ceiling?
If they do, it will not be beneficial to the average worker. That's what I'll say. So no.
No agreement. So what happens, Erica? We go stalemate. The country defaults on its debt. Is that where we're headed?
Maybe. I mean, I think my word to your original question would be eventually. I think the question isn't whether they'll come to an agreement. The question is whether McCarthy has any control over his caucus in Congress, and I'm not convinced that he actually does. So hence my prediction of this is going to take a while.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk a little Grammys. We have to, because they're coming up this weekend. Beyonce dropped that social media gold about her upcoming tour, and social media, of course, the Beehive, everybody went crazy. The Beehive is so organized that they get to go on to Ticketmaster before everybody else and buy their tickets. So it pays to be a part of the Beehive. So Any plans, either of you, to check Beyonce out in this first concert that she's done in, a while now?
Yes, July 29th. She's going to be at Meadowlands in New Jersey. I hope I can go. I've kept my job. I didn't follow her lead about quitting my job. Hopefully I can afford a nosebleed seat.
All right, what's going to happen? Beyonce and Adele, Erica, toe to toe, record of the year, sound of the year, album of the year.
I think Beyonce is going to take most of
Song. I said sound. Song. S-O-N-G. Song of the year, record of the year, album of the year.
All the awards. I think she's going to take most of them, if not all of them. I think this is her year. That album it's great. It's the best one, I think, my favorite of all of the ones she's done.
Wow. Are you feeling that same way? Adele had a pretty big year too. Those tickets for her in Vegas were insane. And the demand for her, in that Vegas residency has been just crazy. People paying, thousands of dollars for those nosebleed seats you're talking about, Calvin. So I don't know if we should count Adele out. What are you feeling, Adele or Beyonce?
I'm going Beyonce as well. I mean, there's only one Beyonce. I mean, it's her year, as Erica said.
Yeah, no doubt. She has had a phenomenal year, and that photo that she posted on Instagram and she made that announcement is, just classic Beyonce. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Any other surprises you're expecting? Well, that's not a surprise. That's your prediction. Any surprises, though, I should say, you're expecting at this year's Grammys?
I can say I'm looking forward, though my mind is blown that it's the 50th anniversary of hip hop. This I can't believe it's been 50 years, but I'm definitely looking forward to that.
So I had your colleague LZ on yesterday talking about that op-ed that he wrote for the paper about the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And he has a lot of predictions that Kendrick Lamar is going to be quite happy at the Grammys this weekend. He's been, according to LZ, underrated, overlooked, and he thinks this is his year. We talked a lot about this kind of love-hate relationship the Black community has with hip hop. Calvin, are you thinking this is Kendrick Lamar's year?
It could be. Just to go back what you said about any surprises, I think it could be like a Jack Harlow type of situation. I'm not really sure if that album should be album of the year, but that would be my surprise. I think K-Dot has earned his due. Maybe he'll get it, maybe not.
Yeah, and something else popped in the news feed today, Erica. Serena Williams sat down with Gayle King on CBS Morning, and she was asked about the slap heard around the world and what she was thinking about it, because her dad's movie obviously was up, last year for an Oscar. And she said, people make mistakes. She's forgiven Will Smith. I don't know if you heard that interview, but are you surprised by her response?
I did not hear that interview, but I'm not entirely surprised. I mean, I think, them being there, they had the perspective of being in the room and being able to presumably talk to him after that. And so I think they probably have a greater understanding of him and what was going on in his head at that moment than probably most of us ever will. And I think that we should all extend him some grace.
Calvin, Oscars will be here very shortly. What do you think, if anything, what happened last year, Will Smith, Chris Rock, do you think that'll still be top of mind for folks as they, go in their fancy gowns and tuxedos to praise a bunch of movies that most of us have not seen?
I think it will definitely come out in one of the monologues, and they will probably joke about it, in that kind of way. I don't necessarily see it being on the radar for how people are going to conduct themselves. I mean, it was the slap heard across the world, but it was an anomaly. I believe Will Smith has apologized. I believe Chris Rock has accepted it. We have to extend folks grace. Accountability is big, and now we move on.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't seen like all kinds of petitions to reverse the Academy's decision about barring Will Smith. It seems like folks are really ready to give him grace and really ready to move on. So we'll see what happens as the Oscars heat up in the next couple of weeks or so. Thanks so much, Erica, for joining me today. Thank you so much, Professor Calvin Smiley. You both have been phenomenal. Appreciate all your insights and your wisdom on these, breaking and trending news topics. Coming up is going to be Michael Brown Sr. We're going to talk about how his family's dealing with the grief of the death of his son. It's been since 2016. And also Carrie O'Horn is here to talk about the blue line and what happens when police officers try to intervene. There's all these laws that say police officers should jump in and intervene when their colleagues are, engaging in excessive force. She tried that. Didn't turn out so great for her. So want to hear from you. 1-800-920-1580. Give us a call. Love to hear what you're thinking about police brutality and police reform in this country as we continue to watch what develops with Tyree Nichols. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA